It's not just Russia on the receiving end of Washington's economic backlash. On Friday, Donald Trump announced that the US is doubling tariffs on its NATO ally, Turkey.
I have just authorised a doubling of tariffs on steel and aluminium with respect to Turkey as their currency. The Turkish lira slides rapidly downward against our very strong dollar. Aluminium will now be 20% and steel 50%. Our relations with Turkey are not good at this time.
Well, that move sent Turkey's currency, the lira, into a nosedive, while President Erdogan has already said his country will not be drawn into an economic war.
Change the euros, the dollars and the gold that you're keeping beneath your pillows into lira at our banks. This is a domestic and national struggle.
Yeah, not a good day for the lira. Its valuation has dropped to its worst level since 2014. It's now, in fact, worth half of what it was in 2017. The move follows two Turkish ministers being singled out for sanctions last week, while Ankara urged people to convert any US dollars to local currency. Okay, let's get into this further, because joining us live on the programme now is Steve Keen. Steve's a professor of economics at London's Kingston University. Welcome to the programme. How sustainable is it for America to continue on this economic campaign with sanctions? Because there are a lot of battles on many fronts here.
Well, this is a fairly trivial one, though, and I think it's got almost nothing to do with the trade situation between the two countries, because when you look at how much of Turkish exports are actually iron, steel and aluminium, it's less than 5% of their exports. They import just about as much in the same category as they export, and America is one of their smaller trading partners. So I think it's really got to do with the religious battle that's going on between two very similar personalities, Trump and Erdogan, where Trump wants an American pastor released from jail who was one of the pastors who Erdogan claims was involved in the coup against him. So I think this is a peripheral battle, but of course it's destroying the lira at the same time.
Yeah, we will just get into what's happening in Turkey in a moment, but just focusing for a few moments on America, how will the sanctions impact on the dollar, if at all? We did see a little bit earlier the Dow Jones take a dip, but is the market just reacting to Trump's tweet? Is the Dow okay?
I think that, well, unfortunately, the dollar's not only okay, it's rising. And because the American economy is in a mini boom right now, it's partly caused by Trump's policies as well, because as insane as they might appear in overall individual elements of them, it's basically a massive fiscal boost to the economy. And in some ways, even the tariffs are going to force American corporations to invest in the ways they haven't done in the past, while the Federal Reserve is still hasn't yet unwound quantitative easing, which slowly and very ineffectively did boost the American economy as well. So the American economy can cope with this quite comfortably, thanks very much, unfortunately.
Yeah, if the diplomatic relations therefore between Turkey, the US don't settle soon, how bad do you think, Steve, it could get for Ankara from an economic perspective here?
Well, I think Turkey could actually be forced to default on its foreign bonds, because the main danger it has is running a huge current account deficit, as well as having a large level of credit-driven demand domestically. Now, both those can dry up very rapidly, and it might also not so much be what happens in Turkey that matters, but what happens in Europe, because a large part of those loans have been made to Turkish borrowers by French, in particular, by the looks of it, French and Italian banks. Now, if some of those start going bankrupt, then the real pressure on Donald Trump to stop this could come from Europe and not from Turkey.
Just expanding on that, in your opinion, what kind of measures do you think countries can take to make themselves perhaps less dependent on the US dollar?
Well, I think the moves that have been made by China to try to make the renminbi into a reserve currency are part of it, but I would really like to see the countries, the emerging countries of the world in particular, unite around the idea of doing what Keynes wanted to do way back at Bretton Woods in the first place, and that's not allow a national currency to be the reserve currency for the planet, but make up one, which the Keynes called the Bancor, and run that out of the International Monetary Fund in proportion to the size of domestic economies. We would not have anything like the chaos that we have today, nor the power of the United States financial sector, if Keynes's ideas had been followed.
Just finally, do you think when you look at foreign policy here for Washington in particular, that economic measures such as sanctions and tariffs they're simply par for the course here. They're a new instrument of that power struggle.
Yeah, and because you got a new president in charge, who actually likes causing chaos and likes making people upset, because then guess what, they talk about him, and that's the most important thing to Donald Trump. So we're really caught up in anything much more political than we are economic wars right here. And of course, as I said, it comes back to the pastor that has been jailed by Erdogan. This is really about getting him freed, and Trump blustering his way into it far more than it is about the economic impact upon America of Turkey's trivial iron and aluminium exports.